questions. I think I'll go to Senator Steele-John.
Oh, yeah. Can I get you to table your opening statement, Minister?
I can.
Committee.
Thank you, Chair. And thanks very much, Minister. And I'll kick off by thanking you and your office for your briefing in relation to the Duckett review, which was really useful. Now, I'm going to go first of all to Thriving Kids, if that's okay. On the 20th of August, the government announced the Thriving Kids initiative, presenting it to the community as a pathway, as an opportunity to restore broad-based support for infants, children and parents, so that kids can thrive outside the NDIS. On the 21st of August, I believe it was, the Minister was asked a question that was on the minds of a lot of community members after that announcement, which was how will kids with autism or developmental delay be placed into different categories, so mild, moderate, etc. In answer to that question, the Minister stated, quote, that will ultimately be a clinical determination. So my first question to you is, would you be able to provide a bit more information or insight into how these categories will be defined for children under 9?
Thank you very much, Senator Steele-John, and I do wish to acknowledge your willingness to engage with me over recent months since I came into the role. Senator, you're correct. The government is establishing Thriving Kids because we do recognise that for children with low to moderate support needs, we think that there are better alternatives, and we heard that advice through the review that was provided to us by Professor Bonatati and Lisa Paul. I think in the public statements that you've referenced, Minister Butler has made it clear that there are design questions to work through. This is a program that was first canvassed by the review in its discussion of foundational supports. A system of foundational supports for children was agreed by National Cabinet, or they agreed to progress it in 2023, and we are keen to see this come about. I think that the department can speak to you a little more about the way we are thinking about some of these design questions, but I suppose my emphasis would be that it is we are at the beginning of that process. We've asked Professor Overclade to co-chair the working group, as I alluded to in my opening statement, and we're also very interested in the feedback that we'll hear through the committee work that Dr Freelander is leading. But perhaps Mr Mansfield...
Could I just ask whether the team might turn the mics up a little bit? It was a problem yesterday with... Yeah, bit quiet.
I'm also quite short, so sometimes the mic's a long way away.
I'm quite far away from the mic, so it's a perfect storm. Thanks. That's much better.
Good morning, Senator. Luke Mansfield, Acting Deputy Secretary, Disability and Carers Group. Senator, as the Minister indicated, the advisory group that's been co-chaired by Professor Overclade is very much looking at the elements of the design. As part of that goes to things like how do you try and drive earlier identification of children that may have developmental concerns and delay or disability, and then once identified, how do you, as quickly as possible, get them into the supports that they and their families need. In terms of the question around the process by which people will be identified as having low or moderate support needs, that process is still part of that design work. It's also part of discussions with states and territories in terms of the negotiations that are underway. We are very much in the middle of engaging with states and territories around some of the assumptions that go to the questions that you've asked, as well as working through the design elements which include which children will go into Thriving Kids, how they'll be supported through that, and indeed through mainstream systems, as well as those children that will continue to be supported through the NDIS.
Okay. Thank you, Mr Mansfield. So, at this moment, you're not able to share with us who will be placed into the mild or moderate category. Is that correct?
That's still part of the design process, Senator.
Okay. What clinicians will be at the head of that process? Are you able to shed any light on that?
So that's also part of the design process, Senator. So very much looking at how people are identified and then how they will move through the system. There's obviously a strong focus on family capacity building as well. As you would appreciate, Senator, people can be identified in many different settings. They may be identified by an early childhood educator who indicates that there may be an issue. They may be identified through child maternal health system, which may indicate that there is a need for support. They may be identified through a GP or a nurse practitioner. So those processes, we very much want to leverage as much as we can those existing systems and processes for identifying and getting people into support. And there is a focus on enabling that to occur as rapidly as possible. Okay.
So we've got the role of the clinician and the age, the categories questions are still in the design phase. The government stated that the Inklings program will be for kids up to 3 years old. Is that correct?
The Minister identified that as one initiative that exists today that is being trialled in WA and, as you would know, as well as in South Australia, and use that as an example of the kinds of supports that may be beneficial for children at the younger age. Of course, there's also another trial that's being undertaken in Victoria that's also looking at an alternative model to Inklings in that particular space as well.
Okay. What's the name of that trial?
So I'll just find my notes.
Now, while Mr Mansfield looks at that, perhaps to explain the process we're undertaking with the states and territories, the Commonwealth hasn't endorsed or committed any particular program. We're talking with each jurisdiction to understand what are the programs that they currently provide, which might be considered to fall within helping this target cohort. We also want to understand to what extent can those programs be scaled to deal with a larger cohort of children. And then we also want to understand what gap may that leave in each jurisdiction to ensure coverage. And so that may involve sharing best practice from other jurisdictions into other places, and it may also involve whether the Commonwealth would have a role in some programs that it makes sense to have a national coverage. And in the conversations that the Minister and we've had, we've often focused on things that might be digitally enabled, with a question of does it make sense for 8 jurisdictions to build a digital offering when it could be appropriate to have a single national offering.
Senator, the name of the initiative is Parents and Infants Engaged in Victoria.
Okay. So we've got the WA trial of Inklings with the NDIA. It is also Inklings is being trialled in South Australia, but that is separate to the NDIA. And then we also have this program in Victoria. Are there any other trials going on that are similar or relevant to this space? Or those are the three?
They're the three in relation to that particular cohort, Senator, the young ages.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Now, in terms of Thriving Kids, the target age range for this program seems to be 8 and under. Is that correct?
That's correct, Senator.
Okay. So what's the youngest age that a child will be eligible for Thriving Kids?
Well, it's from birth, Senator, but in terms of them actually accessing a service, it would depend on individual circumstances. It's 8 and under, and of course some children can be identified very early that there is a developmental issue, others it emerges later. So there's no exclusion in terms of age. It's 8 and under.
Okay, so, but just to be clear, it's 0 to 8?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Will children within Thriving Kids be split into further kind of subcategories based on age?
Certainly the discussions that we've had with states and territories have looked at issues of ages and stages, if you like. So obviously there are the young children that we've been talking about just now. There's children who are entering early childhood education that need particular types of support, and then there's school-aged children. But we're not necessarily categorising children in that way. Of course, there might be different types of supports that are going to best meet the needs at different ages and stages, but that's part of the design process.
Okay, so that's part of the design process.
Senator Steele-John, I just need to... we only have a short period of time in this first sprint, so I just wanted to check to see if the Coalition had some questions. So in order for us to share the call, I know that we do have another 2 hours of a block where we can all get in and ask questions, but I think it's important just to maybe share the 10 minutes across the to the Coalition. If you can hold on your next set.
Unless you're nearly finished this.
No, I've got a few others, but just to be clear, there are more questions that I have around this program that can only be answered in this period of the day. So I know we've only allocated a short period of time, but I'm in a position where I have to kind of insist on finishing my line of questioning here, because there's not an opportunity to do it outside of this first morning block. So I'm happy to cede to the Coalition, but we're going to have to push this section out.
That wasn't a conversation that's been had with me. The program is set until 9:30, and I'd like to keep that on track. I understand your position, but that wasn't conveyed to us in the negotiation. So I am going to let you continue with your line of questioning, but I do just want to make sure that the Coalition also have an opportunity to ask some questions, and we are now into 9:24. So, we've allocated time, but we also want to keep that. Otherwise, we're going to cut into the rest of the program. So I am just going to leave that in the hands of others to consider that. If we borrow from other parts of the program in order to be on time, we need to make sure that we're sticking to the questions, if I can put it in that way.
Chair, if it's of any of assistance to you, I'm happy to be more fluid in relation to the interface between this section and the following section, and most of the officials, I think, are reasonably similar. So if Senator Steele-John wants to continue on, I can certainly, I would have no objection, but obviously you've other members of your committee.
You're only going to get another 5 minutes until we can... So if that's the containment of your conversation, we're not going to be able to push out any further. Otherwise, we will cut into the rest of the program. So,
Unfortunately, we're going to have to cut into the rest of the program. I'm going to insist on my right to finish my line of questioning.
Well, I will need to have some conversations with the Deputy Chair, who's not in the room at the moment, and the Coalition, and I will call a private meeting in order to facilitate that. So I won't be told by committee members who are not voting members of this committee that I'm pushing out the program without consensus of that in my committee. So appreciate that you have questions and that you would like to ask those, which you will have the opportunity to do, but it's also the responsibility of the Chair to manage the program. So I will have that conversation and I will ask for a private meeting very shortly. You can continue. Sorry, Minister.
I in no way wish to interfere in the committee's management of its own time, but if it assists you, Chair, and other committee members, we would expect Department of Health officials to be available during the period in which the agency and the Commission appear as well, and we would acknowledge the interaction between Thriving Kids and the NDIS and the Commission's activities, and so we wouldn't expect, you needn't worry that the relevant officials won't be here for that second block of time.
If that assists, I'm happy to
I will need to give the script. I'm happy to give the call for the next few minutes to do that, but I think, as the Minister has said, the officials will be in the room, particularly on what I'm hearing is your line of questioning, which is on thriving kids. So you can continue into the next block. But
the Deputy Chair's on her way and we'll have a private meeting.
Sorry?
The Deputy Chair's on her way and we'll have a private meeting. Okay,
that's fine. I will wait until she gets here, so if you want to continue your line of questioning. No, I was giving the call to Senator Steele-John to continue the line of questioning.
Yeah, great, thank you. All right, well then we'll pick up where we left off. So in terms of how you've spoken, Mr. Mansfield, about different ages and different stages. Can you give us any further information on what the service delivery might look like and how it might differ for different ages and different stages?
So, Senator, that again is very much part of the design process, but as the Minister has said and as the terms of the original commitment at National Cabinet was that the services would be delivered through existing government service settings where appropriate, and in terms of the nature of the services and supports, we envisage, as the Secretary indicated, that there would be potentially some digital offerings, some advisory services, in-person services, group-based services, and that they would be rolled out across the country, as well as building on existing programs.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mansfield.
Before you continue, Senator Steele-John, we will now suspend for the committee's private meeting. To Senator Steele-John.
Thank you very much, Chair. And let me note and congratulate Ms McNaughton on your elevation to acting CEO. An easy time to come into the job, I'm sure.
Thank you, Senator.
All right, let's return to thriving kids. So, conceptually, once children with developmental delay or autism have gone through the Thriving Kids programme in whatever form it ends up taking, because you've spoken to us about a lot of things still being in design, what is the intention as to the impact on the child and the family of then passing beyond the range of the Thriving Kids programme? Particularly what I'm interested in is really the what then. You know, is there a managed transition to other supports? What does it mean for people?
Senator, thanks for the question. There's a few different scenarios here. In the circumstances where someone is 9 years old, for example, and they have accessed Thriving Kids supports, if they meet the threshold for entry into the scheme under Section 24, disability, then they would enter the scheme. If they don't, then they would access other mainstream and community programs, noting that many children, the intent of early intervention is to try and provide them with some form of early intervention support that enables their development outcomes to be improved and for them to thrive. And for some, their needs will be met. Some, their needs will be met in quite a short space of time. Some will need further support over a longer space of time. But there are many different scenarios, and these are some of the things that we're working through in terms of pathways, both with states and territories through the Overclade Advisory Committee and indeed in the discussions that we're having with the disability community.
Okay. So we've got some kids will transition into the NDIS, some kids will transition out to mainstream services. Is that correct? Those are the two pathways we're envisaging?
Yes.
And are those mainstream services which you hope will exist by then, or are you talking about currently existing services?
I'm talking about currently existing services, Senator.
Okay. And is the Commonwealth, or does the Department envisage a need for the Commonwealth to increase funding to those currently existing services in order to meet that additional demand of kids for ageing out of thriving kids and coming into their services and systems?
The intention of Thriving Kids is really focused on early intervention, and so early intervention, by its definition, does not run forever. There's an end to the benefits that can be derived through early intervention supports, and so children who ultimately no longer require those early intervention supports will access mainstream services like other children who don't have developmental concerns or issues. Of course, there's other work that's happening, Senator, in mainstream services to make them more accessible and inclusive, and there's substantial bodies of work happening in the education system, in the health system, in other service systems through Australia's disability strategy to try and continue to drive improvements in inclusion and access, and that work is ongoing as part of the implementation of Australia's disability strategy.
Okay, so we'll come out of Thriving Kids either into mainstream services or into the NDIS, which kind of brings me to the basic question that is also on a lot of people's minds, which is, I think, for the government, really. Minister, in your view, what is the central aim of the Thriving Kids initiative in the view of the government? What is the key outcome or outcomes you're seeking to achieve here?
Thanks, Senator Steele-John. I alluded to this in an earlier contribution, but the advice that we received and the testimony received by the independent review into the NDIS was that for many children, the program of individualised supports offered by the NDIS was not necessarily the best way to support those children and their families. And some of the challenges identified were a level of uncertainty amongst families about what early interventions would be effective for them, and some concerns about whether or not the particular model of interventions that were tending to be obtained through NDIS participation were actually the best possible way to assist those children. And so our objective is to identify a program of supports outside of the NDIS that will be accessible for families and children, that will allow them to obtain assistance more quickly, and that will be responsive to their particular needs and requirements. There are complex design questions around this, and we acknowledge those. They include the fact that offering a program of this kind will engage service systems that are run by the Commonwealth and service systems that are run by states and territories, and we acknowledge the need to work with state and territory colleagues on these questions. But we're very encouraged by the fact that First Ministers back in 2023 agreed that foundational supports should be developed, agreed that children should be a priority in the development of those supports, and have been working in their own jurisdictions to understand the programs in their own areas that could be utilised to build up a program of this kind.
Thank you. I'm going to rotate the call to Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Chair. My questions are perhaps a little more high level than Senator Steele-John. So I'm just keen to understand the interface between the foundational supports in our HRA deal that was that's under negotiation at the moment between the states and territories and the federal government, and this program of Thriving Kids. So, am I right to assume that Thriving Kids is a foundational support?
I'll ask the Secretary to talk through or perhaps Mr Mansfield to talk through the way that the interaction with the states and territories is occurring.
Thanks for the question. I suppose there are two aspects of looking at it. In terms of the Commonwealth state negotiation, The December 2023 NatCab set a funding envelope for foundational supports, which was $4 billion for this cohort of 0 to 8, which was equally shared between the states and territories and the Commonwealth of a cap of $2 billion each.
Yep.
There is an overlap between foundational supports and Thriving Kids. The Thriving Kids is probably taking part of the concept of foundational supports for those groups and encouraging their uptake of those services. But there's also a slight nuance in that as the Minister pointed out in his National Press Club speech, the idea is to not have the same access to the NDIS for that cohort before they have had the opportunity to use foundational supports. So many of the programs will be the same, but the concept here is to deal with early intervention for children with mild to moderate support needs, with autism and with development delay.
So is the $2 billion that the Minister announced at the Press Club that's going towards Thriving Kids, the $2 billion federal contribution as part of that the National Cabinet, or is it an additional $2 billion?
No, it's the same dollars, and it's just a question of the scheme design with a focus to ensure that you achieve those Thriving Kids objectives.
So on that basis, that was a matching dollar for dollar funding. So is the rollout of Thriving Kids contingent on the states and territories agreeing to fund their $2 billion worth?
So at the moment we're in negotiation with the states and territories. If the states and territories ultimately agree to the Commonwealth State Agreement, then there would be some sharing of both programs and responsibilities between the states and Commonwealths. If those negotiations weren't successful, the Commonwealth would have to think about how it dealt with Thriving Kids separately.
So there is a possibility that Thriving Kids will be solely a federal government funded program?
At this point in time, we are negotiating in good faith with the states and territories with the intention it's a shared program. There are shared programs between Commonwealth and state.
Okay. So I'm just trying to understand here. So you said to me that Thriving Kids actually isn't foundational supports in its entirety. They're sort of inextricably linked but not necessarily the same thing. And yet the funding envelope appears to be the funding envelope for foundational support. So what else is in the foundational supports bucket apart from Thriving Kids?
Senator, in terms of the original commitment, there were a couple of different elements to the National Cabinet Agreement. There was an agreement to invest in foundational supports 50-50, co-designed between Commonwealth and states and with involvement in delivery. That envisaged that there might be different groups of people supported through foundational supports, and in the discussions between the Commonwealth and states since December 2023, there was a shared view that a focus should be on children. And so that's very much where Thriving Kids is seeking to meet that need.
So if you were saying that, and I'm very confused about how this actually works out, but I'm sure you'll clear it up for me. So you've just said that the agreement at National Cabinet in 2023 was for foundational supports to be a program that would be co-designed between the states and territories and the federal government. Subsequently, there was an agreement that it would be predominantly focused on children, but not necessarily entirely focused on children. And yet the first time the states and territories said they heard about the Thriving Kids program was when the Minister stood up at the Press Club. I'm interested to understand how that could be co-designed.
Senator, there's been ongoing discussions with states and territories for a considerable period. There were national consultations that happened in 2024 between September and December that heard from more than 4,000 people. There were discussion papers that were part of that